Okay, well, again, greetings from Toronto, Ontario. My name is Andrew McDonald. I work with the PAC Next team on various sustainability and circular economy initiatives, along with some teaching at Ryerson University here in Toronto and the Graphic Communications Management program there. So on behalf of the PAC team, I should say, I want to extend best wishes to you and your families as we continue to all navigate the ups and downs of COVID-19. Now, before I introduce our wonderful presenters, just a few housekeeping notes to get us started. So PAC Next envisions a world without packaging waste. That's our vision. And the PAC Next team offers you a wealth of knowledge and expertise. And we really like to be your go-to source for high caliber resources related to packaging, sustainability, and circularity. And just one example of that is our upcoming packaging circularity course, noted on the slide, coming up next month, October 19th and 20th. And you can find more detail in the events section at pac.ca. As well, we have some excellent webinars coming up. So please keep your eye out for details coming soon, also at pac.ca. So our webinars, for those new to our webinars, we aim to end at 5 minutes to the hour. And at that time, or just before, we'll post a poll on today's webinar, and we greatly appreciate you taking that extra moment to rate our webinar and give us that feedback. Our speakers today will present for about 35 minutes, and that'll leave us with about 15 minutes for Q&A. And so you should see the Q&A option, it'll either be at the top or bottom of your screen. And so we welcome with open arms your questions, and we'll do our very best to field as many as we can during the session. But we also aim to address any outstanding questions in the webinar follow-up, which will be provided to you along with a recording of the session. So let's begin today's session using life cycle analysis, LCA, to track your packaging sustainability. So our speakers today, Prashant Jagtap is Trayak's founder and president and CEO. Trayak's mission is to provide easy to use software solutions which enable design and manufacturing of sustainable products and packaging. Trayak offers an enterprise-level sustainability platform called EcoImpact, and EcoImpact has a suite of sustainability solutions that includes Compass, which will be a focus of today's presentation. For over 25 years, Prashant has consulted with leading brands and manufacturers from a variety of industries to help improve their product and package development, launch processes. He's led many workshops and webinars on the use of screening LCA and sustainability scoring to track and report on environmental footprints. And Prashant has a master's in manufacturing systems engineering and an MBA. Joining Prashant today from the Trayak team is Alison Youns. Alison is a trained LCA professional and works as a sustainability consultant at Trayak. Alison conducts training workshops and webinars that support Compass users, and she accelerates sustainability initiatives by actually performing LCA assessments. And Alison earned her Bachelor of Science in Environmental Engineering. And I can tell you from my own experience that both Prashant and Alison were a great support to me when I was introducing Compass to 120 students in my sustainable packaging class at Ryerson. So without further ado, please welcome Prashant and Alison. Wonderful to have you with us today, and over to you, Prashant.
Thank you, Andrew. Greetings from Cincinnati. So both Alison and I are in Cincinnati, Ohio, US. And we'll talk today about a lifecycle analysis, LCA, but we'll also give you a slightly different flavor of how you can leverage LCA within your entire organization. And for that, Hang on one second. Yeah. So the agenda for today is we'll talk a little bit about who Trayak is and what our experience has been, and the holistic approach of sustainability of packaging with Compass and the score. And then we'll walk through a real example that Allison will take over and talk in more detail. So now, who is Trayak? So Trayak, is a company that really focuses on packaging and products and the sustainability strategies associated with those. And as our platform, as Andrew mentioned, we have an enterprise level platform called Eco Impact, and then Compass, Score, all sort of solutions on top of it. And we do work for both packaging and products. Now, many people really know us as Compass, but we are the company behind the software. Now, so what do I mean by this comprehensive sustainability with Compass and Score? And before I jump right into that, I want to mention the historical significance of where Compass originated. It was actually in the year 2006 that the Sustainable Packaging Coalition put together a team to define at that point just what sustainable packaging meant. There wasn't a clear definition of it. And so as they put together this team and defined it, they realized there isn't an easy tool to measure and benchmark packaging. And that's where they conceived and funded the Compass tool. Compass draws from a lot of industry standard methods and indicators, and it's reviewed periodically by external experts. And the most recent one was performed in 2018. Now, from an LCA perspective, what Compass provides is a pretty comprehensive environmental footprint that considers these 8 indicators. So these are, again, each one of them is derived from pretty standard, well-known methodologies. And so the results from these are pretty standard. And the sustainable packaging, like I said, put it all together about in 2006. So now from a LCA perspective, we all know that the whole idea is to look through the entire upstream and downstream process for any material and manufacturing all the way to disposal. So in Compass, what we do is we provide the cradle to grave approach. And we also take care of modeling everything so that there's consistency across all the materials. One of the big things, in life cycle analysis is many people think it is pretty complex and it takes a lot of modeling effort. So we take care of all of that behind the scenes for you. Now, in terms of the data, this is another thing, when people talk about life cycle analysis, there's various terminologies, and I just wanted to briefly go through them. So for all the material flows and all the manufacturings, there's a lot of what we call life cycle inventory. That is the inputs and outputs that go into every step of the material manufacturing. And so that inventory data is what is collected from various places. And then on top of that, looking at the inputs and outputs and emissions, we can collate that into different impact categories. And from that is what we finally come up with the indicators, which is the actual impact of carbon footprint or water consumption or greenhouse gases, etc. So that's how the whole data flows inside the Compass software. Now, when I say comprehensive, this is what I mean. So we take the life cycle indicators that we calculate that a lot of different LCA softwares calculate, but then we also consider along with that a lot of the typical performance characteristics for packaging. And that could be things like damage rate, could be things like shelf life, could be the cost, because we all know that we really can't make decisions about reducing the impact in a vacuum, right? So you always need to trade off that with the performance of the package itself. And so that's one of the things that we do pretty uniquely. And so we provide this library of this metrics that you can pick and choose from along with your LCA metrics to do a more comprehensive analysis. Now, you'll also see here that when people think of lifecycle analysis, a lot of times it's about a single package and you're trying to find the environmental footprint. Or sometimes you're comparing things, two packages, one existing, another design alternative, and you want to find out what the impact is. So what I want to show you here is we have taken that further, where now the LCA sort of underpins a few different things. So obviously we do single analysis, obviously we do comparisons, but we also use that to look at not just individual packaging, but a portfolio of packaging and be able to understand the impact as a portfolio. And from that, we kind of track not only the LCA metrics, but some of the score metrics that I talked about earlier to give you a more comprehensive analytics about your packaging portfolio. Now that in turn can really help you with the goal setting. And so that's the message I wanted to kind of send with what we do with the LCA. And so as a business process, when a lot of our customers come to use the Compass software, what they're really trying to do is, many of the companies these days have external commitments, whether it's corporate sustainability reports or reporting to Walmart or reporting to a retailer, things like that. So obviously you have those goals derived from those commitments. Now, to begin those things, many times you have to benchmark not just individual packages, but perhaps your entire portfolio. So as a business process, Compass can be integrated into your workflow, into your work process to be able to do all of that. And then obviously, as you benchmark and you figure out where you have hotspots and where you want to focus your sustainability initiatives on, as you make changes, as you make design improvements, you can compare that and simulate various alternatives. So it may be various alternatives for end of life, etc. Now, as you're doing that, you can also just track how you're performing against some goal. So a lot of times when I talk to customers, I get the impression that there's a goal that is set up high in the organization, but on an individual level, at the design level, you're not sure whether any change that you're making, is it towards the goal, is it away from the goal, what's the impact? So we help you with doing that as well. And then as I mentioned, when you do the benchmark and you consider the LCA metrics and the other performance metrics, you can actually get a pretty broad analytics about your packaging portfolio. And so this whole thing then kind of goes in a circle and you can do it iteratively. Now with that, what I'm going to do is hand it over to Allison, and she will walk you through an example where she'll go into the details of what I just talked about. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. As Prashant mentioned, we wanted to look at this as if we were a company, and our company is called Steve Snacks, and we're really faced with the challenge that our retailers and our consumers are questioning the sustainability of our packaging, and we're not really sure where to start. We're just on the beginning of our sustainability journey, so we kind of need to work with our packaging design teams as well as our sustainability professionals in our company to come up with the best packaging design for our almond packaging. And we also maybe want to report this progress for Walmart's Project Gigaton. And so we're really left with the questions, what are the best practices and what are the next steps? So going through the process of this holistic thinking and this circular methodology, first we're going to look at our goals that we have set, and we're going to go from there. So we have our goals, and these have been set, let's say they're corporate sustainability goals, and they've been set by management. And we are trying to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, water use, fossil fuel use, and we're actually able to enter these goals into Compass. And so if you see in the screenshot below, you can see that I have each of my goals. All of my goals are for packaging, and then you can see my indicator. And so in this case, it's greenhouse gas emissions. I can enter a baseline year that I want my reference to be from. So in this case, it's 2018. I have my baseline value in terms of metric tons. So this is what my entire portfolio, maybe I know this from previous years, or maybe I just have a number that I've assumed and I want to kind of iterate and make sure that this is accurate. And so from here, I say that I would like to reduce my overall GHG emissions by 10% by the year 2025. And so that's how this reads, and that's how you can enter it into Compass. And the idea is that once you have these in Compass, you're able to track progress of all of your packaging portfolios against these goals every time you run an LCA or a roll-up report. And I'll discuss that in detail a little bit later. But I wanted to give the framework of this is how we're tracking goals and overall starting the process of looking at this holistically. So the next step is, well, let's look at what we have and benchmark. And we need to understand our areas of focus, maybe our areas of improvement, so that we can reduce our impact overall and make a more sustainable package. So with that, what information do we really need? For the LCA through Compass, we need information that's typically going to be found on a spec sheet or listed in a BOM, so a bill of materials. So this consists of the mass of the packaging, the materials that are required, any processes, so those would be things like blow molding, injection molding, film extrusion, lamination, and then the packaging type. And this is an overarching type for each component that we use to kind of determine the end-of-life impact, and we pull from end-of-life values that we have from various reports such as the EPA in the US, which tells us this material in this packaging type is likely to be landfilled, recycled, or incinerated at this percentage. And so I have a quick video which actually shows how to model packages in Compass. So this is just a screenshot that I took. And I'm modeling a packaging system that is for our almond containers. And you can see I enter a name, I can enter a quantity if I would like. And then in Compass, we support 9 different regions. So you can see I can select as many as I want. If you were manufacturing your package in Canada, you could select that. And then you also can select a base unit, and that really defines the amount that your product is measured in. And then you're also able to specify categories and brands, and these are all able to be entered by your own company. So this is just a way to show you that you can organize BOMs based on if you have different brands or categories that you're modeling. And then the idea is you have a packaging system skeleton, basically, and it consists of a primary package, a secondary package, and a tertiary package. And in the primary package, we just have the plastic container. And so you can see I have these easy-to-use drop-downs where I have the material, as well as I can enter the mass, and then the conversion process. And then once I have the conversion process, I'm able to add as many as I need. So you'll see I'll select 2 in this video. And then the packaging type. And as soon as I select a packaging type, I pre-populate end-of-life values based on the information that we've collected and put in the background of our tool. And the main takeaway from this video, I know it's going through it very quickly, it's to show that we have many materials that are just in the drop-down that are user-friendly and easy to use, but it's also a way to model your entire packaging system and look at the overall picture rather than just looking at the primary package or the secondary package. You're able to optimize for the entire pallet level of your product. And so now we're looking at the palletization. So I was able to enter how many primary packages fit in a secondary package, so how many packages fit in like a shipper or a corrugated box. And now I'm modeling how many of my shippers can fit on my pallet, and I'm able to specify that I have just a wood GMA 48 by 40 expendable pallet. And then just with that information, we've modeled the entire packaging system, and we can see we have it built out. And if you wanted to add more components, like the lid and the paper label, you could also do that. And with that simple information, you're able to conduct your LCA and start getting your impacts for your overall packaging system, and also dive in and look at the component level. So I know that was a little bit fast, but the idea was we modeled our packaging system so that we could benchmark our product. And with this, we can then look at the component details and look at the areas for improvement. So in this example, if we look at greenhouse gas emissions, I have my total LCA results, but I can also break these down into the component details. So I can see that my plastic container has the highest material impact. That's that red bar that is squared in. And maybe as a packaging designer or as a sustainability professional, I say, I want to focus on reducing my material impact for my largest component. So maybe I look at switching that material from HDPE to PET or paper or something of that sort. And then again, I can look at water consumption. I can look at all of the 8 indicators to optimize. And it looks like my best design alternative would be to look at changing the material of our container. And so as a packaging designer, that's what I'm going to go forward with. So once we have an idea of our initial impact for our existing package, then we want to improve the impact. And this is done through design improvements, lightweighting, material changes, and it allows you to really look at the big picture and make holistic decisions by understanding your overall trade-offs. So I have my current packaging, and now I've identified that I would like to simulate a material change to maybe a paperboard carton, and then also look at a format change into a flexible craft pouch for my almonds. And I can model all of these in Compass, and once I have them all modeled, I can compare them. So you can see I have my various options, and I can compare them based on the packaging system. So I'll just select the 3 that I wanted to optimize, and then I'll compare them. And it will give me the LCA results in terms of my reference. And so what this shows me is I'm able to compare packages and look at all the indicators at once, or I'm able to just focus on one indicator. Let's take, for example, greenhouse gas emissions. So I can see my reference plastic container with plastic lid. This gives me my impact. And then I can see that my alternatives have reduced the impact. So they've reduced this by about 40%. So this was a good change in my opinion. And they've reduced GHG by about 30%. So these both have improved our impact. The fiber canister with plastic lid has improved it more, but we also want to look at the other indicators and see, is this the case across the board? Because we don't want to shift the burden somewhere else. And so then we can look at the fiber canister for fossil fuel use, and again see that it reduced our impact most significantly compared to the other alternative. And this really gives you an idea of how to simulate and how to optimize for various packaging systems. And if we look at this further, here's just a screen grab of the LCA results. You can see that we have everything broken down into the 4 main phases of the life cycle. So material, manufacturing, transportation, end of life. And then you can also see what we call are these simple indicators. So instead of communicating results to stakeholders or to your team in terms of, we're saving this many kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalents, you can say something like, this is the amount of carbon dioxide that would be the equivalent of taking 83 cars off the road for an entire year. And you're able to calculate the LCA for various production volumes. So if you knew how many of these almond containers we were making a year, Steve Snacks could enter that into Compass and calculate the impact of switching their annual production volume to this new package. And so that's really what tells the story and what drives this initiative, and as well as is more tangible than just saying kilograms of carbon dioxide equivalents. And so simple indicators, there you can see I have 5 here. We have simple indicators for water use, fossil fuel use, and greenhouse gas emissions. And I've just pulled out one, which is the cars taken off the road. So you can also say things like acres of forest yearly, average number of U.S. homes powered yearly, number of showers, average showers that people can take a year. So it really helps communicate LCA results in a tangible, easy to understand way to stakeholders or even consumers. Another thing that you can do within your LCA and within the SCORE module is to really track life cycle assessment attributes alongside sustainability attributes. And so you can see the spiderweb chart, and this really helps me visualize trade-offs. So in this example, I want my lower impact is actually closest to the center. So you can almost think about it like I'm getting closer to the bullseye, I'm getting closer to my target. So in my example, if I have my fiber canister with plastic lid, we know that performed the best for greenhouse gas emissions. So you can see that here. So that's the blue, it's closest to the center, it's our lowest impact. If we look across this though, we can see maybe our damage rate increases because it's not as sturdy as the plastic container was. So that's something that could be a trade-off that we need to evaluate and consider. And you can just visualize and map everything on the spiderweb chart to help you make the best decisions. And all of these metrics that you see are able to be prioritized and weighted based on your company's priorities. So if you didn't want to consider something, you could not show it on the chart. If you wanted to give something 50% importance, then the chart would be normalized and scaled based on those weightings. And Compass allows you to evaluate many different sustainability strategies. So I've listed a few here. You're able to look at material change, process change, a format change, lightweighting, increasing your post-consumer recycled content. If you want to include biomaterials, you're able to simulate and optimize those. You can also look at reuse scenarios and refill scenarios. And we have this new circularity index where you can look at your circularity score for each of your packages. And then you can also look at maybe an e-commerce or a retail scenario, and then include all of your supply chain logistics like transportation or sourcing something from a new supplier. So finally, once we've improved our impact and kind of simulated all these new alternatives, our idea is we want to track our progress. So this is the idea that we could make incremental changes or adopt radical changes throughout our company and track those impacts and the progress against those goals that I showed you a few minutes ago. So this allows you to track your progress in real time. So you can enter those goals in Compass, and when I run a roll-up report, I can benchmark against those goals. So for example, you can see with some new packaging changes, I've been able to reduce my fossil fuel use by about 9%. So I'm almost at my goal, which was about reducing by 10%. For greenhouse gas emissions, I've been able to reduce by about 6.7%. My goal is 10%, so I still have a little bit of a way to go, but I am progressing towards my goal. And then water use, same story here. Pretty close to the 10% goal target, but about 9% reduction. And you're able to put goals for every indicator that you see in Compass. And so every time I run a roll-up report, it's really tracking against my PCR goal, average biorenewable material, and cube efficiencies. And you'll see some of these are SCORE attributes and some of these are the life cycle assessment attributes. So it really just gives you a picture of how am I doing, how am I progressing towards my sustainable packaging CSR overall 2025 goals. And then finally, of course, we want to analyze and report our progress as well as be able to communicate to stakeholders with no extra effort. We all have you know, we all have our jobs. We don't need to add an extra thing on our plate. So with roll-up reports, we're able to look at everything in a quick overview and really look at the overall results quickly. And so this allows you to identify problem areas. It allows you to look for opportunities for the biggest improvements. Maybe your biggest production volume should be where you focus efforts to reduce your overall packaging impact. And it allows, of course, for a company-wide impact of all of the packaging that you're making throughout a quarter or throughout a year. And we're able to look at that in weighted and non-weighted. And weighted really looks at the production sales volume, and non-weighted is more of an individual impact or an as designed. So both of these will give you different insights and attributes that you can track and report and optimize for. When I'm creating a roll-up report, I'm able to select various BOMs that I've built within Compass, and I'm able to do this for my current packaging as well as all of the projects that I've ever created in Compass. And so it allows me to roll up the impact for everything at once. So you can see that's the left screenshot, me creating the roll-up report. And then it gives me insights into my material usage. So this is a breakdown of the percentage of plastics, wood, paperboard, biopolymers, corrugated that I'm using across all my packaging. And so if you have a goal to, let's say, reduce plastics or reduce non-forest certified corrugated, you could track that through this report. And so that just brings me to an overall summary. So when you're looking at your packaging, you want to look at the overall comprehensive management of your sustainability. So you don't just want to look at it in a silo. You want to look at the big picture and make sure you're going through this iterative process of your goals, benchmarking, improving, tracking, and then reporting, and then refining goals as you see fit. And it allows you to also identify areas of improvement and areas where your packaging has the most impact, where it can be reduced and lead to the biggest win or the biggest quick win. In Compass, you're able to evaluate many strategies. I named a few, but the list is endless. So every new design change, you can incorporate Compass into that phase so that you're able to evaluate your package before you even go to the manufacturing phase, saving time and money. And using Compass and SCORE together, you can really make decisions that are based soundly on science, as well as evaluating all the trade-offs before going to the next step in your design phase. The simple indicators of Compass allow you to communicate results effectively and quickly and easily, because consumers or stakeholders are really able to tangibly look at GHG emissions in terms of cars or acres of forest, and water in terms of Olympic-sized swimming pools or number of showers. And the idea is, of course, to mainstream sustainability and work this into your engineering and your design work process. And then at the end of the day, track and report against goals that we know a lot of companies have made. So Compass really is a holistic tool that allows you to do all of these things. So thank you for joining us today. If you're ready to start your sustainability journey with Compass, please reach out to either Prashant or I. We'd be happy to get on the call to discuss. You can also request a free trial of Compass to try out the tool for yourself, or visit our website, trayak.com, for more info. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Allison. From setting goals to running reports in a truly comprehensive way, thanks both of you for such a thorough and clear explanation of Compass and SCORE, that combination of the two modules. So just a quick reminder to our audience today, You should be able to sort of hold the cursor either over the top part of your screen or the bottom part of your screen, and you'll see the Q&A. So by all means, again, we welcome your questions. And Prashant and Allison, we've got a number of questions to throw at you. And we've got, let's see here. Yeah, perfect. We've got about 15 minutes to do that. So let's get to it. And so Prashant, for you, the presentation mentioned the ability of Compass to customize the LCA for a particular user or customer. So here's the question. Let's say a company sources one packaging material from multiple vendors whose technology and distance from the factory may differ quite a bit. So can Compass take into consideration these varying vendor situations to compare them one against the other?
Yes, Andrew. So absolutely you can. So by default in Compass, we have what we call industry average data for every material and manufacturing. And that's to get you started so you don't have to spend a lot of time looking for data. But then, from a supplier situation, yes, what changes usually is, the location, how far the material or the components travel, etc. So you can easily model those things. In addition to that, let's say you have a supplier and they have something really efficient in the way they make the material or the way they, do some manufacturing step. Now you can absolutely incorporate that as well. Typically, the way that works for our customers is we work with your supplier and we work under NDA with them and we try to understand what is different. And as long as they have the data, and we can then, incorporate, the improvements that they might have into the software. And this data, can be made available only to that customer if it's, let's say, confidential or proprietary, or there is, some time to market considerations for that.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, you actually covered off a couple of questions there, a supplier related, the supplier piece as well. So that was perfect. Okay, so let's move on. Here's one. Allison mentioned that EPA regulations can be incorporated. Can European Union regulations also be incorporated?
Yeah, I can take that question. So absolutely. So when you saw Allison going through the video, you saw that the software starts providing feedback to you about the end of life pretty much right away. And the reason for that is the software is preloaded with end of life for various regions that we support. So in the US, it would be from the EPA, and various parts of the world for different regions. There are organizations that we have identified that provide reliable end of life data. So all that data is part of the software, and it's presented to you at the right places.
Yeah, so a quick follow-up from me on that one. I'm just curious, do you find the quality of that data, let's say the end of life data in particular, does that in your experience vary quite a bit, or is it, would you say, consistently quite reliable? Like, could you just comment on the quality of that, the data you're able to access with respect to end of life?
Yes, so if you're talking about, across the different regions of the world, I mean, yes, there are certain, let's say, differences in terms of how long they have been reporting, what the history is, how reliable the data is. Like in the US, the EPA has been reporting this data for a while now. Same thing with Europe and Canada. But in certain other parts of the world, as we have been supporting those regions, a lot of the data is more recent, and sometimes the validity of the data may be up for question. But what we try to do is pick the best that we can, and on top of that, we also still provide the option to the user to say, if you have more current data, you can change that, you can add that into the software, and you can simulate that with those things also.
Perfect. Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Allison mentioned in one of the slides, I should say, there was a mention of kind of a library. I believe this was associated with the SCORE module. there's a library of different, possible areas that you can track. And so the question from one of our audience members is that library relatively easy to customize? And there, for example, if a package manufacturer modifies their process to take advantage of advanced sustainable technology, can the LCI inputs be modified to include that?
Okay, so I think this question has two different parts to it.
Yes, yeah.
The first part is when you just look at the library of the score attributes, the performance related score attributes like shelf life and damage rates and things like that. So that's pretty extensive. It's an ongoing thing. As we hear from our customers, we keep adding to it. And in fact, for a customer to use it, it's pretty straightforward. It's like it's pretty much a slider to turn it on and change its weighting for, how important that might be for your company. So that's one part of it. The other part of it, I think we talked about is, a supplier and their, let's say, specific, improvements that they might have. That's a little longer thing. And what we have chosen to do is we have chosen to not just let anyone just enter the data into it directly, but we sort of work with the supplier to enter that data. And there's a reason for that. The reason being, over the years, a lot of people have come to rely on the data inside Compass. And what we want to do is exercise some due diligence in terms of the completeness of the data, where it is from, how reliable is it, what was actually used in the analysis. Because as you know, in LCA, there are 2-3 different ways of calculating greenhouse gases. There are 5 different ways of calculating water consumption. So you need to make sure that the data that is entered is comparable to the other data that is inside the software. And so that's why we exercise this judgment. And we try to make it also holistic, meaning don't try to enter only one indicator, but try to be more comprehensive about the impact of whatever the change is from the supplier.
Yeah, thanks. And bang on, there were, 2 different parts to that question, and I think you addressed both really well. So I'm gonna chime in with a question of my own. As an educator, I like the move to, as Allison explained toward the end of the presentation there, to identify indicators that they were referred to as the simple indicators, but they really relate to people's everyday lives, whether it's number of vehicles taken off the road or liters of gasoline used, showers, etc. And just curious how, speaking of data, due diligence around data, how did you come up with that list of indicators?
Yeah, so even those, I mean, if you look around, on the internet, a lot of the EPA offers some of these things. There are various other organizations that provide that. So what we did was we did our own due diligence in terms of what are the common things that people use as analogies, to really look at this. And we looked around and made sure we could find reliable calculations for do something like that. And of course, over the years, those will change. So for example, the average fuel efficiency for a car over the years will keep improving, right? So those data does need to be adjusted. But yes, so we did do some due diligence in making sure that we are able to calculate those things reliably.
Yeah, okay, good. No, that seems like a nice way to connect what can be quite abstract, a spider chart, and then turn it into something that's quite tangible in terms of people's day-to-day lives.
Yeah, and honestly, Andrew, I'll say one thing here. Initially, we resisted to do that because we were thinking, oh, that part is simple indicators. We want to do the heavy lifting and actually calculate the more complex indicators. But what we found was, in terms of communication, to your team members or suppliers or other stakeholders, it doesn't quite have the same effect when you present a very technical indicator. And so when we decided to finally put it in, we just found all our customers just really, loving that. So it was one of those good decisions that we made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, good to hear. Yeah, I think helpful to have both. Okay, well, let's move on. I've got a fresh one for you here. So does LCA, and so Compass as well, address what the, I think by this point, fairly well-known UK foundation, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, calls leakage, you know, those mismanaged materials that end up as litter in, you know, a local park or a local river or the ocean, or blown off a truck on the way to the landfill, those sorts of materials. Does LCA address in any way that sort of leakage?
You know, that's a very interesting point. And, you know, leakages obviously have a lot of attention and a lot of, you know, public attention to it. Interestingly, from an LCA point of view, right now, there isn't a lot of reliable ways of measuring the impact of leakage, because leakage, once it occurs, it could be, you know, let's say degrading on a land somewhere, or it, you know, maybe by the riverbank or some other place outside the landfill, right? And then when it ends up in the ocean, obviously it degrades there as well. Now, from an LCA point of view, when we calculate end of life, we calculate, you know, what happens in a landfill. So whether it's sanitary or unsanitary landfill, and of course, incineration. But today, there isn't a very reliable method of calculating the impact of the leakage itself. So we can capture what percentage was leaked, but the actual environmental impact of that, I think there's still work to be done. Now, we're monitoring that and we are following that. So as soon as we have some reliable thing from the LCA community, I think we would be happy to incorporate that.
Yeah, good. Yeah, obviously not not an easy thing to tackle, but important that we keep it on the radar and continue to try to find ways to analyze it and come up with some meaningful data. Okay, so I'll move totally new topic, and that it relates to the Compass score, really to the business model. So the audience members' comment here first is, look, we may only get 1 or 2 chances to use a software like this in a given year. So is it possible to use it on a case-by-case basis? And if so, can you comment at all on, you know, what does it cost to get involved with this software?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the model for the software is a subscription model and on an annual basis. And the reason for that is, as you can imagine, you know, not only do we provide the access to the software, but we also continually update the data behind it. And not just the data, but also functionality. And as you have seen, over the years, the software has grown quite a bit from being a simple single analysis tool to all the way to where it is today. So the subscription model works best. Now, we also offer our customers that if, you know, they don't have enough packages to be aligned, you know, or analyzed through the year, they could just do a service with us. We are happy to do that. We have a team of sustainability consultants, and Allison is one of them. You know, we are happy to do a fixed price project where we can just help you with the analysis. The advantage of that is, unless you're familiar with LCA, we can actually do the model and analyze and explain the results for you. So that could be another way to start as well.
I see. Okay, so there are two different ways to slice the cake, and depending on one's needs. Okay, perfect. So I would, particularly in recent months and recent years, I think we read more about and hear more about the circular economy and circularity. And it was noticed that, I believe it was on the list of SCORE attributes, circularity was one of the options. And so some LCA results suggest that circular solutions may not always reduce negative environmental impacts, and in some cases, it might even increase them. So the question is, what role can LCA play in strengthening circular economy thinking and practice, and vice versa?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, one of the things that happened was when circular economy came out and the material circularity index came out sometime early last year, I think a lot of people started thinking, okay, now I don't need to do LCA. I can just use the circularity index. But that's a little misleading because, first of all, not all circular solutions are actually, environmentally less impactful. And the reason for that is obvious because, when you do a circular solution, you're going to use a better material. Maybe it's more impactful. Maybe the manufacturing is more robust and you have something that needs to last for multiple uses. So the initial impact can actually go up. And then the basic assumption in a circular model, in a loop kind of model, is that everything that you use is coming back and being reused. And as you know, I mean, in reality, it doesn't really work that way, right? There's always losses in the whole loop. And so, you might just get 80% of everything back, or just 90% of it back. So those losses also have an environmental impact. So the way we view it is that we view both of these as complementary, meaning using a circularity index to calculate how circular your packaging is, along with the LCA, together can really give you a better idea of how good your packaging is or how good it could be.
Makes sense. Bringing the two together, trying to pull out the merits of the different ways of assessing packaging and the environmental impacts. So I'm just taking a quick peek at the time here. So we got a couple of minutes left, and I'm just gonna. Okay, so here's I think a quick question. Just when you've mentioned SCORE, in addition to Compass, if one takes a subscription for Compass, is it automatic that the SCORE functionality is available, or is that considered an add-on that one, there's an extra charge for that? How does that work?
Yes, so what we chose to do was, again, given the history of how the software was created, we do have the Compass with just the LCA as the base module that you can subscribe to. And when you're starting off, or when you're, let's say, you want to just focus on the environmental impact, you can absolutely do that. But what we've found ever since SCORE was introduced, which, by the way, was with the consulting with our customers, and a lot of them said, hey, I'm taking your results and then I'm putting it somewhere and I'm doing my own analysis. Why don't you have SCORE in there? So that was the history for it. But so now what we find is, once we introduce SCORE, about 95% of our customers actually choose to have SCORE also right from the beginning, because it just makes sense, right? So to answer your question, yes, it's possible to get Compass, just the LCA part, absolutely. But you might want to think about, really, is that, and by the way, you can do it later too. I mean, you can start off with that, and then once you're ready, you can say, okay, add that on 6 months down the road, or 5 months down the road, or a year down the road.
All right, thank you, Prashant. And so I'm going to be like the radio host who says, okay, we got time for one last question. We've got 15 seconds. And because I'd love to squeeze in this last audience member question, and that is, could you give the audience a rough sense, and I know it depends, of how much time does an LCA take from start to finish? Ballpark estimate.
Oh, absolutely, yes. So, if you have, a packaging spec or some information about the bill of material ready, or access to, I mean, you could do this within 20 minutes, really. So maybe it's 20 minutes to 30 minutes. You can model what you saw Allison presenting in the video. You can model that pretty quickly, because what we try to do is we give you a template. We give you everything, so that all you're really doing is entering for each component of the package in the primary or secondary. You can just go ahead and add the material, the manufacturing process, and you can get started. The other approach we also do is, we don't make a lot of things required. We don't say that unless you have all these things, you're not going to get an analysis, because sometimes the reality is, depending on the organization, that certain data may not be handy or may not be in your possession. Maybe you have to talk to a supplier or someone else in the company. So you can just enter what you have and you can start getting results right away. And so the approach we took is your model can keep getting refined as you enter more and more data. But you will get some data even if you just enter a material and a weight. So, and that's how we wanted to make it accessible and usable for any packaging engineer or a designer or a sustainability professional to jump in there and start producing results right away.
Got it. Well, in an effort to give people a couple of minutes to transition to what may be their next Zoom call of the day, we will end there. So on behalf of PAC and our webinar audience today, thank you, Prashant and Allison, very much for taking the time to share your knowledge with us. We appreciate it. And to our webinar audience, thank you for joining us. We trust you've learned something new today, and shortly we'll send out the recording along with key takeaways and responses to any outstanding questions. So in the meantime, keep smiling, stay healthy, and hope to see you back again with us soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Bye-bye.